So in the interest of time, I think we're not going to read long bios. We'll do quick intros. I'll ask them our two amazing panelists to introduce themselves. Quick introduction, Mahesh Ram. I was most recently the head of AI product at Zoom, where I got a fantastic opportunity to work very closely with Aparna and her first-class team. I joined Zoom, and Zoom acquired my conversational AI company, Solvvy, in 2022. And prior to that, I had done two other startups that were acquired by Fortune 500 companies. And today, I'm spending my time doing some board work and some nonprofit work, including Funda, which has grown to be a very large community of Indian origin founders that some of you may know about. But my main job today is to bring you these two amazing panelists. So Astha Malik, please introduce yourself first and tell us a little bit about yourself and the company and what you're doing these days.
Thank you. I'm Astha, and I'm the Chief Business Officer at Braze. We are a customer engagement platform. I also sit on a couple of boards, public and private. And at my company, I have a pretty interesting remit across strategic, operational, and commercial responsibilities, and run a lot of the internal and external AI strategies. So excited to talk to you about that today.
I'm Aparna Bawa. I am the Chief Operating Officer for Zoom. And I would say you know what Zoom is. You probably use it. Thank you very much. For probably all our customers. And if you're not, I will come and talk to you. Thank you so much. Please let me know if you still need to be convinced. I would say for us, AI is so important because as you can see, we sort of put the product category on a map in terms of collaboration. People like to tell me, oh, I didn't really know what Zoom was before the pandemic. And the dirty little secret is we were doing quite well before the pandemic. Mostly, the focus was enterprises. And now that, sort of collaboration is table stakes, how do we make, the name of the game is how do we make all of you feel that ROI or feel more productive and able to use some of that conversation intelligence for yourselves. And that is sort of the underpinning for us.
Excellent. Well, let's jump right in. I thought let's start with the elephant in the room question. The New York Times last week or 2 weeks ago said, they called it the third bubble of our century. AI, the third bubble. They said, investors are pouring money into this with little regard for how much it could earn and when. And so they issued their warning, whether you believe them or not. And then I saw this from Coatue, which was an interesting slide that they put together, which basically implies that, they call it the infinite money glitch, which is that there's money flowing around between these five companies. They're all paying each other, becoming each other's customers, and spending trillions of dollars and driving market cap. But is anyone really getting benefit out of this? And is it just a circular economy that's fooling the rest of us? So with that as the backdrop, and I'll start with that question. So let's start with that question. Is this a bubble, overfunded, overhyped, and under monetized, or is it a function of these five companies driving it? But from where you sit, are you seeing this as the early stage of something truly transformative, or we're not quite there yet and it might become something, but we're not sure? What do you see?
I'll give you an as complicated answer as the question is. But I think with every transformation wave, there's that has the potential to impact not only just your work, but your life. People in this room, many of you are VCs, there's just a flood of capital that infuses the market. And typically, even you referenced the third bubble. Even with the dot-com era, there was a similar pattern. You saw the funding far outpacing the monetization and the ROI. And I think we're seeing a similar pattern here with AI, with some nuances. So I do think there are some similarities, and you saw the big five over here, sort of just emerging as the top leaders and the top beneficiaries. And again, if you look at history, that's exactly what happened with .com. So, the Amazons, the Googles of the world, they emerged much, much stronger, and they laid a very strong foundation for how the internet ultimately sort of unfolded with its massive potential in front of all of us. And I think that's exactly what's happening here. The difference is, I think we are seeing sort of a mix of where do we see ROI, and it's not really black and white. It's not just, okay, the big five are the ones that are delivering the ROI. There are a lot of new emerging technologies and startups that are delivering an equal amount of impact, if not more, in the ways that they're delivering technologies to enterprises. So I think similarities there, but the nuance is that it's not that we're not seeing the smaller players deliver any value. In fact, much of that is very measurable in many ways. And yeah, I think the best analogy is like when you have a lot of investment going in something, there will be some collateral damage. Some will win and many will lose, and I think that's exactly what's playing out in front of us right now.
Aparna, Zoom has a very unique perspective, which is that roughly half the business is serving small to medium-sized businesses, hundreds of thousands of customers around the world who are not necessarily large enterprises, and then an equally big and growing fast enterprise business. So from that perspective, which is a unique duality, what do you see in terms of, is it a bubble? Is it real? What's actually happening?
That's a really good question, and I will answer it, but I actually want to start. I'm going to pull a Trump and answer the question I want to answer, but then I'm going to answer your question. But I
that's
have
your media training.
Yeah,
that's what it is. Yeah.
I'm transparent about it at least. But I have I think this is not the Zoom view. This is the Aparna view on whether this is a hype bubble or a bubble or not. I think I have a much more cynical view of the investment of capital in general, especially in the Bay Area or in tech, because I was an investment banker. And I used to cover semiconductor companies when it was not hot, okay? And it was I put all my soul, and I understood how to tape, what the costs were to tape out a chip, and that if a startup taped out a chip and only had a time to market advantage of 2 years, then Broadcom was gonna come and eat its lunch eventually. So how are we gonna talk about the technology market differentiator? Oh God, trust me. And now, semiconductor is hot again. So it's an ebb and a flow. I've worked for storage companies, storage systems companies. When it was not hot, then it was hot. And I think my cynical view is there's a time and a place for everything. You just have to be lucky in where you intercept that time and place. I happen to be very lucky that I joined Zoom. When I joined Zoom, people were like, why are you joining Zoom? It's just another mousetrap. We already have WebEx. The only reason I knew it was different is because I was one of the 2 companies I worked for. We were beta users of Zoom. It had stopped me from hitting the car in front of me on the 101 with my 2 kids in the back when I'm negotiating the sale of my company. And my CEO is like, you got to get on now. And I'm like, oh, crap. That's real value. Is it quantifiable? Absolutely not. But when I got the interview, I'm like, oh, I actually like this company. It saved my life. Okay, I don't have to go back into different screens and remember the password and put it in. I can just click the link. It's got noise suppression. The kids, you can't hear them, and I'm talking to a bunch of different bankers, PE shop holders, and nobody knows the difference, and I'm in the car on the 101. That is ROI you cannot quantify. So I joined the company, and I was like, you know what? I got lucky. Okay, great. Fast forward, I feel like, just like Astha said, this is a transformational moment. And to answer your question, there are some times in life, I feel like this can be compared to the .com environment, but also a little bit when SaaS companies took off. And I remember I was a banker when Salesforce went public, and we were all like, what? Salesforce is going, this is amazing. It was so revolutionary. And then now look where we are. That was a time where the idea of net MRR was so novel, bankers didn't even know how to calculate it. Net expansion rate, land and expand, was so novel, it was like you were coming up with something super unique. Now if you think about it, LTV to CAC, all that stuff is table stakes. We are going to get there. There is a time and a place. It's moving so much faster than AI. I guess the way I look at it from an investment perspective is, if you are not a part of the story, you look on the outside and naysay the story. And so you just have to make sure that, and I laud the VCs that say, I want to intercept it in the right point, at the right angle, at the right valuation to get in. And sometimes you have to put in money. If you have 10 duds and 1 hit, and the 1 hit works, okay, that's the business model. I would also say, for me, just from my perspective, the dynamic has changed. We do have very large tech behemoths now that we probably didn't have back then, but the fundamentals still stay the same. I was thinking back when I was a baby lawyer and Webvan went public. Should that have gone public? Probably not. Like now we think back, there are still some AI cases today where we would probably say that probably isn't a monetizable thing. There are some cases in security where you know they're not going to go public, but that's probably going to get bought out by someone. Those are all sort of calculated decisions that you make. I think that's going to happen. I will say there's one aspect to AI that's very different. So the whole idea about sort of ROI and making things quantifiable, part of the challenge in this sort of transformation is that the initial wave of advancement can be viewed as headcount replacement. And when you're in an enterprise, whether you are delivering products to the SMB or to enterprise, your own teams don't want to do the calculation of their own headcount replacement. That's a very human aspect of business that we sometimes forget. And so while that is there, there's also a way to reframe the problem authentically, not disingenuinely, to say, is there a way we can get metrics that help us do more? And I think that's what we see in our target market Zoom. So we have AI Companion, and we can explain about that later. But in our target market, we see so many small and medium-sized businesses say, help me just get better. I don't have an issue of, taking out headcount or improving my income statement. I just need to reach my market, and it cannot be me. So if I'm a wedding planner and you can help me actually use that agent to go book the vendor on behalf of my client, I can go get another client. And I think that's something that we as an industry probably have to do a better job of getting metrics around.
So that's a good segue to measurement of ROI, because I think the question is, many of the companies in the first wave reported efficiency gains, right? They were talking about efficiency measured in different ways, time saved. And I'll tell a little joke. When we were rolling out AI Companion and I talked to a CIO of a Fortune 50 company, and I said, I'm not going to talk to you about productivity gains. And she said, thank God. She said, because 250 vendors are at my door, all claiming they're going to save an hour per employee per week, and if I believe them, I wouldn't need any employees, which maybe is going to be the future. But she did say thank you for not making it all about productivity. But are we still too early to see actual financial outcomes? And are there examples that you can give, both of you, where AI has created measurable lift in whether it's customer engagement, retention, or revenue? Where can we actually measure and quantify this?
Yeah, I don't think it's too early, because when the conversation started a few years ago, to Aparna's point, everyone was talking about efficiency. It's like, how many hours can you save in a day by having an AI tool write your emails or answer, some phone calls for you if you are a customer service agent, or automate some part of your job. So a lot of that focus was on efficiency, and ultimately, people being people who want to preserve their own jobs. That's one aspect. But then the other is, truly, it's very hard to measure and show that impact unless you are in very specific industries. And I was at Zendesk before, so sure, when you're at the CX company and you have a customer service software, you can show that, hey, you know what, you deployed these agents and they're able to sort of deflect X amount of tickets. They're able to take on more volume because you now have more capability and just more capacity. So those things are measurable, but that's not true for everything. Again, on a day-to-day basis of automation and things that are helping people do their jobs better, my board isn't interested in saying, well, you know what, my marketing team or my sales enablement team saved 5 hours a day because of this. That's not a measurable outcome or a key business metric for the board. And I think that's the reason why the conversation has to shift from just being an efficiency conversation to more about a performance conversation. So I'll give you the Braze example. So we're in the business of customer engagement. Many of you probably don't even know, when you use DoorDash or Instacart and many of these tools, or HBO Max, when things are getting personalized and all your information is getting used to the way that you want it to be used, that's all being powered by Braze, your notifications, your messaging, and everything. And we really wanted to sort of leverage AI to get into that hyper-personalization and driving that one-on-one relevance that has been promised for years, but let's be honest, it's really hard hard. We are human beings. We're complicated. My preferences are changing every day. My husband can't keep up with it. So how can another company keep up with it? So, the thing is that you can use AI then to sort of like get that context, that complete context, then group that into composable intelligence, and then drive the right kind of interactions with your businesses, which is not possible at a human level, right? It's only possible through AI. So I think that's sort of like, again, going back to the value that we wanted to deliver was performance. You can actually demonstrate with what we're calling a decisioning studio now, that if you're sending certain type of messages or you're sending certain type of communication to your customers, which is performing better. So if you're using AI to really gather attributes, we have customers who are gathering 150 plus attributes about each and every one of you. Again, impossible at a human level, but pretty possible for AI because it's not only just getting that from the apps, it's getting that from your connected devices, it's getting that from your data warehouse, also now from your LLMs. So all that context is truly powering that relevance, and it's very easy to demonstrate because you can give that tool a very specific goal. You can say, I want to focus on improving our churn. I want to focus on increasing our conversions. I want to focus on driving more growth. So whatever that is, that agent takes that goal and then turns into a measurable outcome. And you can see that value being delivered in a way that your board and the street understands. So I think it's definitely happening. Now, is it happening across the board? No, and that's why I kind of drew that distinction between the different use cases, the industries, and the shift that has to happen from just efficiency play to a performance play. And let's not forget, at the end of the day, with all the context you gather that AI gives you, I think that just makes you a better business. You have a better understanding of your markets. You have a better understanding of your customers. I think that's one of the most powerful tools, no matter how the technology goes, because I can't keep up with it either. Like every day changes. I wake up one day feeling really smart about what I know, and the next day I'm like, oh shit, I'm really far behind. So, your teams are feeling the same way. But I think, as long as you're in it and you're committed to the investment and you're moving at a pace where it works for you and your customers, that should be good.
Yeah, and two of the things that come out of that, what you said is that the ability to see signal from noise with an unbelievable amount of data, which was very difficult to do in pre-AI. AI does a great job of getting the signal from the noise. Yeah. And the second thing is what you said, rapid experimentation. So being able to run those tests and things much faster with AI and do many more of them in a given time.
You can see if that experiment actually is something that is delivering the results you want, so you can fail it or you can scale it, right? So that power and the paranoia actually that comes with experimentation is like, oh my God, that's a risk. What is my boss going to think if this fails? Or there is an important business metric attached to it. But with AI, you can see those results pretty rapidly. And then you can think about, all right, what do I need to do next to improve on that? So, and that's why I think, it's more of like a controlled experiment than a fireworks in a lab. So that's the difference.
Aparna, what do you think about ROI measurement? Are we like in very immature state, or are we in a semi-mature state? Where are we with ROI measurement?
I think we're in early days, and I think there are some areas they lend themselves faster to it, and some don't, not because they aren't areas that are ripe for the taking, but more because we are not used to measuring in those ways. And it will take one person, just like it took one person to figure out net MRR for a SaaS company. It will take one person to figure out what is the way to discuss in this particular context. I think Astha is 100% spot on. We see it also in the CX context. We have an AI-powered CX solution that is doing really, really well. It is growing incredibly well, and it's probably the fastest launched product from sort of inception to now in terms of scale. I would say it's because you can do something that's more than productivity. You can actually provide stats, how to improve your customers' businesses, and provide them real-time actionable intelligence that they can actually use to improve their businesses. What I think fascinates me, that's great, and that's, I think, today exists. It's going to get better, and that is a business opportunity to invest in today. I think what's really fascinating to me is, the things like I spend more, again, sort of somewhat obvious, but I'm able to use AI in the coding process. Does that make me reduce my number of engineers, or does that actually make me improve my product output so that I can attack have more product to attack more market, to expand my target market? That's also very quantifiable. Again, when I do that, do I have to increase my security assessment? So then that's really also quantifiable for the security companies out there who need valuation and want to have a market multiple that's tied to AI. I also think that there's this intangible element of, I'll give you an example that has really worked for us internally. I mean, it's an internal that our board doesn't care about, honestly, but if I were an investor, I would care about this one. We have AI in our legal contracting process. We have billions and billions of contracts. I can't even tell you how many contracts we have. We can't go through it anymore because it's just too much. And you don't want to hire people to do it. So you have to have AI. But at the same time, we don't have that many outages, knock on wood. But God forbid you have an outage, you have to be able to assess what the exposure is. Well, with tools, how do you quantify that faster time to market? So not in terms of I got rid of a head count and so now I can. No, I used my headcount to speed up the process so that she could go and do another deal for another customer so that my sales guy could sell 20 deals instead of 10. How do I quantify that? Nobody in this industry has thought about it. Nobody. I'll give you another example. So our finance team recently, they get a lot of requests on what is the sales tax I owe for Zoom? And we've got billions of customers, billions. So these are small mom and pops to solopreneurs who are not going to sit there and figure out sales tax on their own. I mean, of course, we have Fortune 1 all the way down to my mother-in-law as a customer. Fortune 1 will know what sales tax they owe. My mother-in-law doesn't care. So how do you figure out? So they were taking human agent time to figure out sales tax across the board. You deliver it to AI, all of a sudden you've got the accurate sales tax, you've reduced time, and you're paying less bills yourself in terms of paying them to whatever state franchise tax board they have. That's a real case demonstrable value. We did an all hands where our finance team showed that to the company. We were all jaws on the floor, sort of floored, because it's so not sexy, but it's so real to us. So those are the interesting aspects for me that not so obvious to the tech sector necessarily yet, but obvious internally operationally.
Yeah, I'll give an example as well. I advise a company called Responsive that does RFP responses, which Zoom is a customer, and perhaps Braze is too. Many of, and they built a really good agent, which is when an RFP comes in. First of all, I'll tell you an interesting story. 4 years ago, they had 5 competitors. Today, they have 55 competitors because everybody can just stick it into OpenAI and you can get a thin wrapper response. But they started to think bigger because they said the real value is when the RFP comes in, should I even be competing? And does it even match what I've won in the past? Can I dip into data that's in Salesforce and other things that win rates and loss ratios and look at that thing? And just the ability to not have people waste their time a day, 2 days, figuring out if we should even bid on this is time that they can then use to focus on the ones they should be bidding on and winning. And so I think sometimes how do you measure that is actually a challenging thing, but in win rates.
Spot on. That's the hard thing, and nobody's figured it out. That's why the boards don't care about how many hours you saved. It's okay, but what did you do then? Was there a reduction in the head count, or were you able to reallocate the resources? That's a hard thing to demonstrate still.
Completely. Yeah. So let's switch gears a little bit to build versus buy versus borrow. So when it comes to your AI strategy, how do you decide whether, and there's a lot of venture investors here, so they really want to know, how do you decide whether to build proprietary capabilities, buy from vendors, or just borrow models, APIs from OpenAI, Anthropic? What's worked, what hasn't, and what's your advice to leaders who are navigating that trade-off between control, speed, and differentiation for ROI? So maybe we'll start with Aparna.
Well, I think I'm going to give Mahesh a compliment here, a backhanded compliment a little bit by saying at Zoom, we have a lot of cash on the balance sheet, and the challenge sometimes for acquisition is when we're a very product-driven company, and so the first thing, the question is, can we just do it on our own, and what's the time lag? What if we just threw a bunch of engineers at this with some, vibe coding? Would we be able to do it? How long is the time frame? And our engineers always, a lot of people in the audience will know that this is the answer. Our engineers always yeah, we can do it. We don't need to buy it. And that, I think, is a hard part. You have to have a bigger lens to say, what's that time to market advantage? What am I actually buying? Am I buying that knowledge? I'll say Mahesh had so much more impact to Zoom than just his Solvay company, to the point where I think we all cried when he left. But it's just a different value proposition depending on how you look at it. I would say it sort of depends on how the founder grew up in many ways. We have a propensity to use open source. We are cost conscious. We're super cost conscious. We just don't waste money. It's sort of the culture of the company can kind of dictate how you go, and nothing is wrong or right. I mean, I'm on the board of Palo Alto Networks. It is a master class on how to acquire, integrate, and cross-sell, upsell, pump out value from acquisitions. That's a secret sauce that they have because of the people that are there and because of the history of how they grew up. That would not work for Zoom. We are so very focused in product and technology. That just would not be our DNA. So I think it just depends on who you are and how you can extract the best value out of yourself if you're a founder, and whether your VC sees that in you. I think it starts with, I hate to make it a psychology exercise, but I think it starts with self-awareness. It really does.
That's a good point.
I think the answer is it depends, at least for us at Braze. And when you think about like build, buy, and borrow, we're actually doing all of the above, but in different ways. We build products, of course, right, that we're serving our customers with. I just gave you the example of like making even a choice of like building it versus buying something. So we've done that, but we also have built a lot of capabilities internally, both Gen AI and other aspects of AI as well. So there's that. And then there's the borrow part. Like if there is sort of like, another capability or like LLMs out there and open models, like why don't we just leverage that and sort of like borrow from that and somewhat build internally? I have a team of 50 growth engineers on my team as well. And what they do is essentially think about how to improve productivity for our internal teams. And part of their job is to do exactly that, borrow. So we created Braze GPT, which essentially is like a collection of new agents that we built to improve both sales productivity, marketing performance, like enhancing, even vibe coding internally. So we've created a library of agents and a bunch of tools with the growth engineering team. So that's a combination of like borrowing and building. And yeah, I think, build, borrow, and buy, it all kind of like, depends on the use case for us. So we're kind of doing it all.
So
I think, oh, by the way, the one thing that I would say is many of those decisions also depend on, the big question about the choice and how it will impact your brand. Because a lot of these things are still not validated. They might be working in pilots, they might be working in some experiments, maybe in parts of your organization, but when you think about even coding and replacing your engineers, are you really ready for that? Have you validated and proven that model works for you? Because ultimately, that's your brand out there, your customers are using, and can you afford to have an outage? Because, there are horror stories right now if you go on Reddit, and I'm sure you all kind of like pay attention to all of that, where agents go rogue. So there is that responsibility that all the executives and the teams have in terms of like preserving your brand, and a lot of these decisions depend on that.
Can I just say one more thing about this topic, though? I don't think the M&A decision is specific to AI. I think the M&A decision is whether to build, buy, or borrow. I heard the borrow part. Build, buy, or borrow. I think that's so core to like deciding on whether you should acquire anything. It also comes down to your level of confidence. And I do feel like people who have amazing conviction, sometimes they fail, but you're almost guaranteed to fail if you don't have amazing conviction. You almost have to have amazing conviction, and how you do that is based on your own secret sauce. And if you're a serial integrator, knock yourself out. And financial engineer it. If you are a serial product delivering company, then you really need to think in that lens and not try to adopt someone else's style. That is true to anything non-AI. That's just true to technology in general.
No, it's a great point. Yeah, no, one size does not fit all for this decision. Last question before we turn it over to the audience for Q&A, and so we'll try to keep this one short, but it's an important question, and nobody's better than the two of you to answer this, because you serve on public and private boards,
no pressure.
as well as report out to your own board. How is it? What are you hearing? Like, what are you doing when you're briefing the board or your investors about the progress you're making with AI? And what are you hearing when you're on the board that's actually resonating, and what maybe is a bad story that you're hearing that's not, they're not doing a good enough job of explaining to you as a board member?
Yeah, so obviously it's a hot topic in every board meeting, everywhere. We have taken the approach, and I have personally taken that approach with my teams as well, of not driving any AI mandates in our teams and across the organization. I think when you drive mandates, it draws cynicism. It doesn't inspire. You're just trying to check the boxes because somebody's asking you to do that, and then you're frantically sort of like trying to prove value one way or the other. And I think we're at a point where people have to start thinking about AI as not as an add-on, but how do you actually embed that into your everyday workflow to get the most potential? And it doesn't happen if you just give them, I need you to use these 5 AI tools, or show me where you're using AI every day. I think you have to sort of understand the two things here. One is, the teams don't know any better right now. Majority of people don't. I gave you the example of I don't every single day. It's a different experience for me, and where I am in my confidence and conviction. But I do think, the approach we have taken at Braze is we are nurturing our teams. We are educating our teams. We run AI academies, actually, for both our customers and our employees. And the intent there is not to talk about just the Braze product. Of course, we end up doing that. But the intent is to educate them about the potential and the challenges and the opportunities that are tied to AI. So we did the same thing with our executive team. When we acquired OfferFit, the first thing we did was we're going to run an AI academy for the executive team, lead by example, get better in terms of understanding the impact and the opportunity, and then roll it out to the rest of the organization. And we did that, and we're doing that for many of our customers. And trust me, the conversations change when you're not just telling your customer, here's a combination of these products that is going to deliver X, Y result, but more around, hey, let me educate you about the potential you have when it comes to driving or evolving your customer engagement strategy. And this is how AI can benefit you. So there's no product in the equation. The how comes in a little bit later, but the what and the why is where we're beginning the conversation with. And we also recently did, and my team led this, the AI summit at Braze. And the idea was to also share ideas. There are a lot of people who are experimenting. They're doing really cool things. And the growth engineering teams releases a lot of agents, and people end up building a lot of their own. So the idea, again, there is to foster this collaboration, to foster this idea of how do we inspire each other, sort of crowdsourcing ideas from each other. So yeah, I think the combination of nurture your teams. We're not mandating. I know many companies are, and more power to them if they think that's the right way for them. But I'm sharing what is working for us, and our teams are coming out of those conversations and those sessions truly inspired instead of feeling like I'm scared. And the last thing you want right now is to scare teams. You need to inspire them and treat this as an opportunity and not a threat. But as soon as you mandate, I think the pendulum swings towards, oh, this is a threat to me and my job. So.
I think the company I work for and the company I'm on the board of they have very different dynamics. So I can give a little flavor of both. Zoom is just a unique beast. It just is a very unique beast. Mahesh is laughing. But we say that about all our companies, by the way. No, but we have so much brand recognition. It's insane. We have so much natural brand recognition. Sometimes I wish we didn't as much, but so much natural brand recognition, but it's all around meetings. If I asked you what you think of Zoom, you'd be like, I love the meeting, or I hate the meeting, or the UI is so simple. We are a platform. We have so much more than meetings, and sometimes when I whip out the client and actually show people what I can do and why my life is better because of it, they're like, what? Yes, it's there. So for us, and AI is such an important piece because it has been underpinning our platform for years before it got cool with ChatGPT. So how to make you all know that it has so much capability, that we have a contact center, we have phone, we have whiteboards, we have email, we have calendar, we have docs, and everything is integrated in a cohesive way. And very shortly, we'll have agentic capability with our ZVA product. I mean, it's insane, the capability, how to talk to you about it and have you know it when the brand is so strong. And it feels I feel guilty saying this. It feels like you're not grateful enough that you have a strong brand, but I want just shift a little bit this way. And it's it's the strategy, it's the way you articulate it. How are we articulating it? How are we going to shift the mindset of the customer that has such goodwill and keep that goodwill? And at the same time, you hear so much in the marketplace about conversation to completion. Guess what? We own the conversation. But we also have a trust with you all that we don't want to use your conversations for our benefit or for, for evil and not good, if you will. So how to balance that, those are the debates at our board level, which are very different. So for us, it's a completely strategic conversation. The internal AI use case, it is so table stakes. That you just have to get up every day and just do. And that's why I think the startups have a unique opportunity. You can think of the most mundane things. I think about it every day, but I should start a company. But then it's like a trade-off. Like, how can you start the company when you're already working? But the most mundane things that you can use to add value or use AI to add value, we're not talking about that at the board level. That is, you just assume that you just need to do that, and you need to just, get about 2%, 3% operational efficiency. Don't quote me to those numbers every quarter, whatever the case may be. That's just the assumption. So we're not talking about that at board level, but we just have to do it. That is the expectation. I would say the board I'm on, similar, it's more of a conversation on AI is changing the dynamics for security in so many ways that you want to make sure as a board member, you want to make sure they're telling you not only how are they leveraging this for revenue growth, but that you yourself are not a sitting duck for reputational harm. And so in your back of your mind as a board member, I'm always thinking about this is great, but as the security sort of steward of choice, are we one step ahead of the bad actor that we could prevent this for all our customers and for ourselves? And that is again, it's a strategic question. Palo Alto Networks has done an incredible job of internal use of AI, and I laud them tremendously. But again, it's table stakes. Mm-hmm. That you expect it. That should just be everybody's, and I think that's an opportunity for founders, honestly. You expect it, and the enterprise cannot do it all themselves. So how are they going to use tools and available options to do it for them? The last thing I will say about this is, it's so interesting to me because we're in tech, and I see this even in my own founder, my CEO. They're so people in tech or who have just grown up in tech, being an engineer or being a computer scientist or whatever, they're so passionate about this. And then there's a whole host of other people, shrinking in number, obviously, but who, that's not their day job. So they do their day job and then they have to go do this at night. And so finding ways to make that easier for them in a table stakes environment, that's an opportunity for me.
That's a perfect way to cap off, I think, our panel part of the discussion. Do we have time to take one or two questions? I hope so, yeah.
Hey, my name is Vedant. I work at a fund called Premji Invest. I know Mahesh for a long time, and thanks to you again for inviting me. I had a question on, when enterprises make this decision of build, buy, borrow, let's say they go down the path of build. There's broadly two options they can go down. They can say, hey, listen, I'm going to use this state-of-the-art model from OpenAI and Anthropic, and then build a use case around that, or I go open source. And typically, they start with the state-of-the-art to prototype, and then if they see value, then they figure out what they want to do next. There's often a crossroads that we see as investors when they reach that point. One is, hey, I can continue down this OpenAI route, but then cost and latency becomes sort of untenable. And then if I go down this open source thing, then I need to figure out a bunch of other stuff that I might not have the internal capability for. Very simply, how do I host this model? How do I run inference? How do I figure out if something better is coming along? How do I fine tune, et cetera, et cetera? So they often get caught in this dilemma. What have you seen some of the best companies that you've worked with or worked for today, or you've seen, how do they manage this dilemma? Do they say, hey, listen, I'm going to go find a use case or change my pricing and business model that allows me to use OpenAI and Anthropic more effectively? Or do I need to go undertake this journey of finding ML talent for the next 6 months, go compete with the Anthropics and the OpenAIs to get good ML talent, and then go build out this because I feel like this has better economics for the use case I'm trying to drive?
Yeah, I think the answer for me is the same as I gave before. It's both for us. It really depends on the use case and what we're trying to achieve. So, even adding build to the, build, borrow, and buy, sort of the threefold choice that you have. We did the same thing when we were like, all right, it's going to take us 2 years to develop on our own, even with the OpenAI and other models available to us and leveraging what else is out there and building on top of it, it was just too slow. I think the market is moving too fast for certain things, and there's going to be a tremendous amount of investment in these open models than what you can afford as a company. And again, different companies, different scales. But sometimes you end up making the choice. The choice at that point was not that we can rely on that model, but we were like, looks like there's somebody else who's already doing it, and that's a faster route to market for us. So we acquired the company. For internal sort of again, productivity, like I said, the growth engineers and the team, they're using open models. That's the best way to do it. Why would we build something on our own when we have Chat GPT and we can build our own Braze agents on top of that and internal capabilities? So, again, goes back to the output and sort of the results and what impact it'll have on your brand, and also keeping in mind what kind of resources and time do you have to be able to invest in something that's moving so fast. So everyone is learning and everyone is sort of experimenting with different things, but that's why we have a more of a open mind around where and how to use build, borrow versus buy. So
I'm going to give you a pretty cynical answer, and I'm so sorry because I don't have an answer, a proper answer for you, but therein lies the rub. This reminds me, this is a much more complex problem than this problem, but reminds me of a time when SaaS companies used to start and everybody used to put on AWS, and then after a while, your costs on AWS are so incredible, but you don't have a DevOps team sitting there to host, and to build the DevOps team is so difficult. It's the exact same problem. It's just more complex, and you've got more money in the industry now that you're competing with, and the engineers are harder to find. This is a really, really tough one, and the mid caps are going through the same question as the mid caps tackle the app layer and how to be relevant in the age of these sort of generative AI behemoths. That is the question that even we are grappling with. When do we use, a Llama? When do we use an OpenAI? When do you use an Anthropic? What's the cost structure? I mean, we have a federated LLM for that reason, so we can be flexible, but we also have $8 billion in the balance sheet, which the startup does not have. It's a tough question that everyone is grappling with.
Yeah.
There's no easy answer. You have to be flexible. I would say it goes back to the conviction. I have seen execs be more easy with capital when they know it's a surefire yes and it's going to be a great outcome. And of course, I'm just going to throw money at it. If it's not, I'm going to he's laughing because he knows exactly what I'm talking about. If it's not, I might use an open source model and but I have a few DevOps engineers or engineers, AI ML engineers on the side to help out. But you don't have that luxury. So, but this is the question that not the mega caps, but the mid caps, the small caps are all dealing with on the quiet.
yeah.
Yeah, I would just add one thing to that, which is that the mid-cap companies, at least the ones that I'm helping with their AI thinking, is unless they're able to really be good at SLMs, using that data that they have uniquely, and really deeply getting into the workflow and the UI UX, something well, they're not going to survive. And that's by the way, what I just stated is really hard.
It's tough.
Doing those three things well and really owning the customer mind share and that workflow, and doing those three things requires unique talent, skills, and many companies don't have the people to do that. They're probably going to fail, or they're going to acquire and pay for those assets. So I think that's kind of what I'm seeing at the lower end of the not the top tier of customers companies. One more question, I think, and then we'll have to wrap.
Hi, my name is Akansha, co-founder at Navi. So quick question, actually building on build, borrow, buy. How is something new is being introduced in your organization? Because I can see so many different routes, right? One is where you see a chunk of employees already using it, and then you kind of make it much more official. There are another ways actually going from top down as a mandate that we have to introduce something, and then you go about introducing that eventually. Or in terms of more strategic aspect as well. So, and it can be tied to a metric. So I'm curious, what is the aspect that, how you guys are introducing and thinking about having anything new?
Yeah, I think for us, when it all started, of course, the frenzy, and people were kind of like, all right, I got to experiment. There are all these hot tools out there, like what makes sense for us, whether that's your marketing team or a productivity team. I think you just have to tread with caution, and we do now have some guardrails on what tools are we going to start using, because ultimately, you're going to have to plug in data, and that data is something that you don't want to be, used in ways other than what it's intended for. And that can have repercussions, again, for your brand and your company itself. So we are putting some tighter guardrails, but we are definitely constantly looking at hey, is there a better solution outside to do this job or improve this workflow? So we're empowering our team to bring those ideas to us. And like I said, whether that's through the AI summits or that's your regular conversations with your leaders, we're keeping sort of the conversation pretty open that, let's talk about it. That may or may not be the right thing to do. And I think the other thing that we are also pushing for, this goes back to the ROI piece, and because we are leading by example when it comes to our own product, we do believe you have to demonstrate the ROI. So, we don't call it POC, we call it proof of value. We do that for our customers, and then, they start investing more and adding more use cases with us. And that has scaled beautifully for us. So the same mindset applies to any new tool that we are evaluating out there. Because there are a lot of shiny objects out there. So you want to sort of be careful of what you're bringing in and what true values are going to deliver. Because it's not you'll know the next day if this is working or not. There's a tremendous amount of investment that goes in from the teams and the investments you're making with your time and money. So those things have to be definitely sort of kept in mind, but we're definitely having those conversations every day.
I would add that at Zoom, the whole genesis of our company was we were the platform for the people, and if you used us in violation of your policy, eventually your company was going to figure out that I had 2,500 people that are off the books swiping their credit card on Zoom. I might as well look at this app, even though I've got my whole networking infrastructure, I've got my E5 license with these other players, but I got to look at this place because I've got 2,500 employees and it's a security risk for myself. And the bankers don't want to use another product because when they're in the airport, it just works and I have to get to my client, and so I'm going to do a personal credit. I mean, that's the genesis of us and viral demand from an employee base and up. We also had university students. They were the future knowledge worker. They were my own nanny at one point when I was interviewing at Zoom said, you should go work for that company because I use it in San Jose State and it's awesome. I'm like, oh, okay, they do have the people. So in that kind of a company, we let our employees play and experiment. At a size that we are today, does that have to scale back? Yes. We tread lightly, but at the same time, just as Astha said, we have an internal AI champions team where there's someone from each sort of sub-function that who's very technology minded and loves to play around with things. You can all the way be from tax all the way to sort of shipping and delivery. They'll have an AI person who's an AI champion, and they play around so that there's some sort of organized chaos, because it used to be when we were smaller, just chaos. I would say it kind of depends on your culture, because if you are the company that was built off of viral demand and you care about employee choice and employee productivity, you can't really put the hammer down. No, it's cross-cultural, it's anti-cultural.
Yeah.
You got to find that customer. But if you come to us, call me first.
Yeah. So before I just thank the panelists, Dr. Sikka was originally supposed to be on our panel, and he's a legendary figure, as you all know, and doing amazing work with his new company. Unfortunately, he has a family emergency and couldn't make it. He did record a video which he wanted us to play, answering the same questions that we asked the panelists. So we thought it would be good to have that as a capstone, and then we'll thank the panelists. So,
hi everyone, Vishal here. I'm really sorry I couldn't be there with you in person today. Anita and Mahesh and the team at TIE asked me to address all of you, in particular 3 points about the bubble question that is on everybody's mind around AI, and on enterprises' ROI and the adoption of AI. I've been involved in AI for the last 35 plus years, 36 years. And this is the 4th or 5th time in my career that I have seen this kind of a huge hype cycle around AI. Do enterprises see the ROI? Where is it, and how do you get to it? I think when you look at the potential of generative AI, there are dramatic ways in which it can amplify our work. In a way, it gives us the ability to approximately synthesize the world's knowledge and make that available to us at our fingertips. And so, one way to measure the ROI is how can it enable us to do things faster or to achieve better quality in doing things better. The other one is also, of course, in how it replaces work, in how it automates work. Automation is a little bit trickier because of the inherent hallucination issue in generative AI. But we are already seeing the first signs of the effect on employment. The brand new things, the things that were never possible before, are just starting to emerge. And as they emerge, then more ways of checking ROI will become available. But in the meantime, it is about automating the existing jobs and about amplifying or improving our ability to do the existing jobs. Which brings me to my third point, which is around adoption. Adoption around enterprise AI is real. MIT recently did a study around the weak adoption of enterprise AI. And in my view, enterprise AI's adoption is for two reasons. One is enterprises, the way enterprises are, and the other is AI, the way AI is. AI has an inherent issue of hallucination. It is not a bug that will go away. It is an inherent property of generative AI. And so that hallucination problem has to be dealt with. And the best way, perhaps the only way to deal with the hallucination problem is what Andre Karpathy calls putting AI on a leash. You have to build solutions, AI-based systems in areas where you are able to surround the AI with ways to ensure the correctness of responses from AI, of using it in the right way. And of course, there is the applications of AI in areas where the correct results don't really matter, whether it is writing summaries of documents or searching for things, or using AI as a hypothesis generator or an idea generator, in areas where the person who is using the AI is in charge of the final outcome and is able to judge whether what AI produces is of help or not. And those kinds of areas where we are seeing adoption. But in areas where correctness matters, there is this hard problem to solve around hallucinations. And those companies, those approaches, those people that solve that problem are slowly starting to see the adoption. And then the other reason for adoption is the way enterprises are. Enterprises are complex. They are like civilizations. They are like countries. Large companies like Siemens or McDonald's or Bank of America. These are enormous enterprises that are in some cases hundreds of years old. And you have to work with their complexity. You have to work with the requirements. And it is not straightforward. Having lived this for better part of my career, I can tell you, it is incredibly rewarding once you crack through that, but it is not easy, especially for small companies to do that. So when you think about this enterprise AI adoption issue, if you are an enterprise, you have to look for solutions that solve the hallucination issue, that are able to deliver value despite the limitations of generative AI. You have to see what other references are that your vendors have worked with. Who else have they served? What is the real value that they have delivered? And if you are a builder of these products, you have to make sure that you solve the hallucination issue, that you have to learn to put AI on a leash and deliver real results to enterprises. You have to painstakingly build references, get people to really solve their problems, and then from that build to other people. Because enterprises buy when they see other peers who have bought them, or if there is some compelling need that they see to buy them. And of course, a very simple way for this is if you are an enterprise, come work with us. We have lots of reference customers. We have a wonderful product that we have built that leverages generative AI to solve real enterprise problems, kinds of problems that when I was at SAP and Infosys, we always wanted to solve, and now we have the ability to solve them. And if you're an entrepreneur looking for a real set of great challenges to work on, come work with us. CEO@vian.ai, vian.ai. That's my email. To close, I would say that ignore this talk of bubble. focus on delivering real value. You know, about 100 kilometers northwest of Chennai is a town called Athiram. Those of you who are Tamil will know that it means a fig tree by the town that was by the side of the fig tree. Sanjay told me recently that Athiram means a fig tree and Pakam means by the side. In Athiram Pakam, they found these tools from the Stone Age from more than 200,000 years ago. 200,000 years ago. People have been making tools, humans have been making tools forever. We have now built a really powerful tool, but that's all it is a tool. Learn to use it, learn to deliver value from it, everything else follows from there. Thank you so much.
That was excellent. So I just want to, again, let's hear it for our panelists who did an amazing job today. Thank you both for all the insights, and I'm sure you'll have a chance to meet them as well. So thank you, and thank you, Ty, for